My parents left me at a train station. No warning. No explanation. Just stepped off the train as the doors closed and smiled. I thought it was a joke until my phone died. Until strangers started looking at me like I was lying. And that's when it hit me. They weren't coming back. Asterisk. Before diving into the story, comment where you're watching from and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the latest stories. As the train started moving, I stood frozen. I couldn't move. Couldn't breathe properly. My legs felt like concrete pillars glued to the floor and my hands were trembling so hard I could barely hold my phone. I just kept staring out the window, hoping, praying that this was part of the joke. That any second now, I'd see my parents running alongside the platform, laughing, waving, telling me to get off at the next stop and wait for them. That they'd be there. That they cared. But the platform faded into the distance. And the call never came. I checked my phone screen again. No missed calls. No messages. Just 6% battery staring back at me like a countdown to isolation. My hands fumbled with the screen as I tried calling my mom. Straight to voicemail. I tried my dad. Number not reachable. I sat down slowly in the corner seat by the window and felt the panic crawl up my spine like ice water. My thoughts were racing, overlapping, arguing with each other. They're testing me. They'll meet me at the next stop. They must have forgotten something, or maybe they're already on the next train behind me. I looked around. The carriage was nearly empty, just a tired man in a suit typing on his laptop, a couple arguing softly a few rows down, and a woman staring blankly out the window with earbuds in. No one noticed me. No one knew I was abandoned. No one cared. That was the part that stung the most, realizing how small and invisible I really was in that moment. I thought about just getting off at the next stop and waiting. But where would that be? I didn't even know the train's route. I had no idea where we were headed, and my phone's GPS was glitching. It wouldn't load the map. Just a spinning circle like it was mocking me. 6% turned into 5%. Then 4%. My heart sank deeper with each percentage drop. I tried not to cry. I really did. I told myself I was strong. I reminded myself of everything they'd said to me before. You're too soft. You need to grow up. We're doing this for your own good. Those words, said with smug smiles and casual tones, felt like knives now. I never thought they'd literally abandon me to prove a point. I remembered earlier that day, how everything had seemed normal. My mom even bought me a sandwich. My dad joked about how he used to get lost all the time as a kid and figured it out. In hindsight, I realize now that maybe that was foreshadowing. Maybe they planned this the whole time. I looked outside again as the trees zipped past the windows. I wasn't even sure what part of the country we were in anymore. Every station name that was announced sounded like a place I'd never even heard of. Foreign. Distant. Unreachable. 3%. Still no call. No text. No sign. I sent a message in our family group chat. Where are you? This isn't funny. Nothing. Just silence. I opened my camera and looked at myself. My face was pale, my lips trembling. I didn't recognize the girl staring back at me. She looked small. Breakable. 15, I thought I had control of my life. I was getting good grades. I helped around the house. I even stopped arguing back, thinking maybe if I behaved, they'd stop being so hard on me. But I realized then that their version of parenting wasn't about guidance or love. It was about power. And what better way to prove their control than to leave me stranded and watch how I handle it? I clenched my fists, trying to hold myself together. The train started slowing. Another station. I didn't know the name. I didn't know the city. But I had no choice, I had to get off. I stepped out into a cold wind. The platform was half empty and the sky above had turned gray. It looked like rain was on the way. I walked into the small station building, hoping for help. There was a man behind a glass window labeled information. I asked him politely where we were, and when he said the town name, I just blinked. Never heard of it. Not even once. I asked if there was Wi-Fi. He said it was for staff only. I tried asking if I could borrow a charger. He looked me up and down suspiciously before saying no. I wanted to scream, but what was the point? I walked outside. Cars passed. No one looked twice at me. The world felt too big, too fast, too far from home. I sat down on a wooden bench by the road, pulled my knees to my chest, and stared at the almost dead phone in my hand. 1% now. I typed one last message to a friend. If I disappear, just know my parents left me. This wasn't an accident. and then the screen went black. Just like that, I was cut off. No map. No messages. No one coming to save me. In that moment, all the illusions shattered. My parents didn't want me to grow. They wanted to break me under the disguise of tough love. And the worst part? They thought it was funny. I sat there blinking back tears, wondering what would have happened if I wasn't the kind of girl who did figure things out. Who could ask for help? Who might still find a way home? But even then, I knew something had changed. Forever. When I finally got off at some random station, I stepped onto the platform like I was walking into another universe. The train pulled away behind me with a mechanical screech, and all I could hear after that was nothing. Just silence. The kind that sinks into your bones and makes your chest feel heavy. It was quiet. Too quiet. The station itself was small, one of those old-fashioned stops where there's barely anything but a rusted bench, a vending machine with 3 working buttons, and a ticket booth behind a dusty glass window. The air smelled like damp metal and cold dust. The town beyond the station looked still, like it had paused while waiting for something that never arrived. I looked around for a sign, any clue that I was somewhere remotely familiar. Nothing. I walked up to the man behind the ticket window. He looked half asleep, maybe in his 60s, wearing a faded uniform and listening to a small radio behind the glass. I knocked gently and asked, "Excuse me, can you tell me where I am?" He looked up slowly, blinked once, and said the name of a town I'd never even heard before. It sounded like it belonged on a map from the 1970s, something I'd maybe passed on a geography quiz but never once thought I'd actually be standing in. I nodded, thanked him, and walked away, trying not to let the panic show on my face. But inside, I was unraveling. I pulled out my phone, praying for some kind of connection. 1 bar. Maybe 2. I tapped on my mom's name and hit call. Voicemail. I tried again. Same thing. I stared at the screen and swallowed hard. Then I tried Dad. This number is not reachable at the moment. Not reachable. That could mean anything. Maybe the signal was bad. Maybe their phones were off. Maybe they were just sitting at home, ignoring me on purpose. Or maybe they blocked me. The thought stung more than I expected. I tried to tell myself I was overthinking it. That they were probably just trying to teach me a lesson and would text me in 5 minutes to say, "Okay, joke's over, we're coming to get you." But those 5 minutes passed. Then 10. Then 20. And still nothing. I walked around the station building, peeking into the empty waiting room where the only sound was a buzzing fluorescent light overhead. The chairs were plastic and cracked. A broken wall clock pointed to the wrong time. I stepped outside again, hoping to find someone, anyone who might help. That's when I saw her. A woman in a puffy coat, standing near the parking lot with her purse clutched tightly to her side, looking like she was waiting for a cab. I hesitated, then took a step toward her. "Hi, sorry, I'm kind of stuck here. Would it be okay if I borrowed your phone to call someone? Mine's dead." She gave me a quick once-over. Her eyes narrowed. She didn't say a word, just shook her head and turned away. Like I was trying to rob her. Like I was some scam artist. The rejection hit me harder than I expected. I wasn't asking for money. I wasn't asking for a ride. I just needed a lifeline. A phone call. A chance. But in that moment, I saw it, how the world looks at someone who seems lost. Not with compassion. With suspicion. I backed away and mumbled, "Okay, thanks anyway." She didn't even respond. I sat down on a nearby bench and just stared. At nothing. My mind was racing, but my body felt like it had given up. I was cold, tired, humiliated, and furious all at once. The realization hit me slowly at first, and then all at once like a punch in the chest. They weren't coming back. My parents. The people who were supposed to protect me. To keep me safe. They weren't circling around to pick me up. They weren't watching from somewhere nearby, ready to jump out and say, "Surprise. Lesson learned." No. They'd left me. Deliberately. And worse, they thought it was funny. I kept replaying their faces in my head. The smirk on my dad's face as he yelled, "Let's see how she finds her way home." My mom's casual wave, like she was sending me off to summer camp, not abandoning me in a strange place. What kind of parents do that? What kind of parents think that's teaching someone a lesson? I could feel something shifting in me, something breaking. Not just trust. Not just safety. But a belief I had always clung to. That deep down, even if they were strict or harsh or weird, my parents loved me. But love doesn't leave you stranded. Love doesn't turn its back when you're scared and alone. Love doesn't ignore your calls, laugh when you cry, or block your number when you're begging for help. My stomach growled. I hadn't eaten since the sandwich hours ago. My throat was dry, but the vending machine inside the station only took coins, and I had none. I looked down the road. There were houses in the distance, a few dim streetlights, but no stores. No people. Just silence. And somewhere miles away were the people who left me here. Not worried about me, not even wondering if I made it out okay. In that moment, I knew this wasn't just about finding my way home. It was about realizing where I stood. And the truth was, I wasn't lost. I had been left. It was getting late. The sky had shifted from pale gray to a moody indigo, and the last traces of sunlight had sunk behind the station roof. I sat on a cold metal bench just outside the building, hugging my backpack to my chest like it might somehow protect me. My phone screen dimmed again, 2% battery left. I lowered the brightness, closed all the apps, turned off Bluetooth, everything I could think of. But 2% still felt like a ticking clock counting down to zero. Help. No Wi-Fi. No working public phone. No idea which direction home even was. I tried to stay calm. Tried to tell myself I'd be okay. But there's a specific kind of fear that hits you when you realize no one even knows where you are. Not your friends. Not your family. Not a single soul in the world. I could vanish and it would take days before anyone even thought to ask where I went. The streets were growing quieter. A few cars passed every now and then, their headlights sweeping across the sidewalk before disappearing again. A couple walked by, too deep in conversation to notice the teenager curled up on a bench like she was waiting for a miracle. My legs were stiff from sitting so long. I didn't want to stand. I didn't want to move. I felt like moving would make everything worse, like the moment I stood up, I'd fall apart. That's when I heard a voice. "Are you waiting for someone?" I blinked and looked up. A woman stood in front of me, maybe in her early 40s, with tired eyes and windblown hair. She wore a simple coat and had a plastic shopping bag in one hand, the kind you get when you just needed a few things from a nearby corner store. I could have lied. I could have made up something about meeting a friend or missing my ride. But I didn't. I told her the truth. That I'd been left. That my parents thought it would be funny to ditch me and see how I get home on my own. That my phone was dying and I had no money, no charger, and no idea where I even was. She didn't react the way I expected. She didn't gasp or ask follow-up questions like she couldn't believe it. She didn't say, "Are you serious?" or "They did what?" She just looked at me for a moment, and then nodded. Like she'd heard stories like this before. Like she had her own versions. Like the world had already shown her how cruel it could be. Then she sat down beside me. "You know," she said quietly, "when people show you who they are, believe them." Those words landed hard. Harder than I expected. I'd spent years convincing myself that my parents were just tough. That they had a strange way of showing love. That I just wasn't trying hard enough to earn it. But in those few words, spoken by a stranger, something clicked. I believed them now. She introduced herself. Her name was Angela. She owned a small shop a few blocks down, a little print and stationery place that also sold coffee, snacks, and handmade crafts. She offered to let me come back with her, just to charge my phone and figure out my next step. And I believed her too. There was something in her tone, firm, gentle, no pressure. I could say no and she wouldn't be offended. But I could also say yes and she'd help. I followed her down the street, keeping a few steps behind at first, cautious but hopeful. She talked as we walked, casually, like she didn't want me to feel weird. Told me how long she'd been running her store, how the town used to be more lively, how she was heading back to close up anyway. When we got to her shop, she unlocked the door, flicked on the lights, and waved me inside. It was warm. Safe. The smell of ink, paper, and cinnamon drifted in the air. There were racks of greeting cards, shelves of notebooks, and a tiny counter with a tray of half-wrap sandwiches. She handed me one. "Eat." No questions. No judgment. Just kindness. She pointed to an outlet near the register and handed me a spare charger. "It's not fast, but it'll keep it alive." I plugged my phone in like it was oxygen. As soon as the screen lit up, I felt the tiniest bit of relief wash over me. Battery, 1%. Charging. Angela didn't hover. She went about wiping down the counter, checking her receipts, humming softly to herself like this was just another normal night. Every so often, she'd glance over and ask if I needed anything. A glass of water. The bathroom. Another sandwich. I didn't even know how to respond. I wasn't used to this kind of softness. Especially not from a stranger. When my phone finally had enough charge, she helped me search for the nearest bus routes. She didn't just print out the schedule, she circled the times, wrote down the number I needed to call in case of delay, and even gave me a small flashlight keychain, just in case it gets too dark. Before I left, she said, "I'm not asking what you'll do next. But I hope you remember this, people like them? That's not love. That's control." I nodded. I didn't even have the words to thank her properly. Not then. But as I walked toward the bus stop with a fully charged phone, a full stomach, and a heart still full of confusion and pain, I knew one thing for sure. In a world where even my own parents had left me behind, Angela didn't. And sometimes it's not about who raised you. It's about who sees you and stays. By the time I got home, it was almost 11 p.m. The city had fallen quiet. Streetlights hummed in the silence, and my feet dragged along the sidewalk like they were carrying the weight of everything I'd felt that day. I stood in front of our house for a long moment, just staring at it. The windows glowed softly from inside. The porch light was on. From the outside, everything looked normal, safe, even. Like it had always been. Like nothing had happened. But inside me, everything had shifted. I reached for the door handle and turned it. Unlocked. Of course. I stepped in quietly, almost as if I was the one who had done something wrong. The warmth hit me first, the comforting, familiar air of home, the faint scent of fabric softener and popcorn. I blinked, adjusting to the light. My heart was pounding in my chest, though I didn't know whether it was fear or fury or exhaustion. Then I saw them. There they were, my parents, sitting on the couch like it was just another ordinary night. My mom curled up with a throw blanket. My dad leaning back with one arm resting lazily over the back cushion. They were watching some comedy show on TV. Laughing. Eating popcorn straight from the bowl they used every Friday night. Like I hadn't just spent hours stranded in a town I couldn't name. Like I hadn't begged strangers for help. Like I hadn't come close to breaking down on a bench, wondering if they would ever come back. They didn't even look surprised to see me. My mom turned casually and smiled, her tone light, almost congratulatory, like I'd just won some kind of twisted scavenger hunt. "See? You made it. We knew you'd be fine." Fine. That word. It felt like a slap in the face. I stood there, drenched in sweat, my hair clinging to my forehead, my shoes soaked from stepping into a puddle near the bus stop, my hands still trembling slightly from the cold and the shock, and they thought I was fine. No apology. No questions about whether I was hungry or scared or if I even needed anything. Just that smug little sentence. I swallowed hard. My throat was dry, but I forced myself to speak. What if something happened to me? I asked. My voice cracked at the end, but I didn't care. I needed to ask it. I needed them to hear the weight of what they had done. My dad didn't even look at me. He just shrugged. Shrugged. "Then maybe you'd learn to be more careful next time," he said. I stared at him, waiting for the punchline. Waiting for the second half of that sentence where he'd say, "Just kidding," or "We were worried," or "We went too far." But it never came. There was no recognition in his eyes. No remorse. Just the same cold logic I'd heard my whole life, cause and effect. Lesson and punishment. Obedience or consequence. My mom nodded like she agreed. You made it back on your own. That's what matters. That's what mattered to them. Not how I felt. Not whether I was safe. Not the fact that I had begged a stranger for help, eaten a sandwich from someone I didn't know, and ridden a late-night bus in a town I'd never heard of. Not the fear I'd felt when my phone died, or the silence that had wrapped around me like a noose when I realized they'd left me on purpose. I wanted to scream. To throw something. To ask them how they could be so cruel. But there was no point. They wouldn't understand. Because to them, this wasn't cruelty. It was strategy. This was parenting in their eyes, control masked as life lessons. Tough love served ice cold. I didn't say another word. I turned, climbed the stairs slowly, and went straight to my room. As I shut the door behind me and locked it, my hand lingered on the doorknob. I listened to the muffled laughter coming from the TV downstairs, the rustle of popcorn in the bowl, the casualness of it all. It was like they'd already moved on, like my absence that day had been nothing more than a skip scene in the script of their evening. I stood there in silence for a moment, then slid down to the floor, my back pressed against the door, breathing deeply through the panic rising in my chest. Not from fear, not anymore, but from realization. This wasn't about helping me grow stronger. It never was. They didn't want me to be brave. They wanted me to feel small. They didn't want me to become independent. They wanted to control me so thoroughly that I'd mistake abandonment for guidance and cruelty for care. They had used the language of strength, be tough, learn a lesson, figure it out, to mask what they were really doing, making sure I knew they were the ones in power. And tonight, I had learned that lesson. But not the one they thought I would. I didn't feel empowered. I felt violated. I felt erased. And the worst part? Somewhere deep down, I realized this wasn't new. This wasn't the first time I'd been left alone, emotionally, mentally, silently punished for existing in a way that didn't meet their standards. This was just the first time they'd made it literal. The first time they'd actually walked away. And now that I'd seen them for who they really were, I couldn't unsee it. That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just felt hollow. But I made a promise to myself right then in the silence of that room, with their laughter still echoing faintly below me. One day, I would leave too. But unlike them, I wouldn't come back. That day didn't make me stronger in the way they thought it would. It didn't toughen me up, or harden me, or turn me into the version of me they always said I needed to become. I didn't come out of it feeling empowered, or wiser, or grateful. I came out of it changed, but not in the way they hoped. Not in the way they could ever claim credit for. They wanted it to be a lesson. They wanted me to see the world as cold and unforgiving, and them as the ones who prepared me for it. But all they really did was show me that the coldest people in my life weren't strangers, they were the ones who were supposed to love me. That day didn't teach me survival. It taught me betrayal. It taught me how easily people can justify cruelty when they label it as parenting. How they can laugh while you're crying and still sleep soundly at night because they believe they're helping you grow. What I learned wasn't how to fend for myself in the world. What I learned was that love isn't supposed to feel like a test you keep failing. That tough love without empathy isn't love at all, it's control rebranded. And most of all, I learned that family is not defined by biology, or who raised you, or who shares your last name. Family is defined by who sees you, who listens, who shows up. That day, stranded in a town I didn't know, with my phone dead and my fear rising, my own parents disappeared. And yet, a woman I had never met before, Angela, noticed me. She didn't owe me anything. She could have walked past, just like everyone else had. But she didn't. She stopped. She asked. She listened. She didn't say, "You'll be fine." She didn't tell me to toughen up. She didn't suggest I was being dramatic or overly sensitive. She just believed me. She sat with me. She offered warmth. She offered help without strings or judgment or moral superiority. In the span of 30 minutes, she did more to make me feel safe than my parents had done in 15 years. Isn't that wild? That the person who comforts you the most might not be the one who raised you, but a stranger with nothing to gain? Angela probably forgot about me a few days later. She probably went back to her routine, her quiet shop, her normal life. But I never forgot her. Not once. Because the kind of kindness she gave me doesn't fade. It stays. It echoes. It fills the empty spaces your parents were supposed to fill. I'm 21 now. I moved out the day I turned 18. No grand announcement. No big dramatic fight. I packed my bags quietly, paid my deposit on a tiny studio apartment across town, and left. It wasn't easy. I had nothing but a part-time job, a few $100s, and a borrowed air mattress. But I had peace. And for the first time in my life, I had freedom. Not just the kind where you can stay out late or decorate your room however you want, but the kind of freedom where you don't have to wonder if the people around you will turn your fear into a joke. I cut off contact not long after. I tried at first. I answered the occasional text. I showed up for a birthday. I stayed polite. But it didn't take long to see the pattern hadn't changed. The same emotional games. The same guilt trips. The same casual dismissals. They reached out once after I posted something online about childhood trauma. My dad texted, "You're overreacting. We didn't abuse you. We taught you to be independent. You should be thanking us." My mom added, "You made it out okay, didn't you?" And I just stared at those messages, letting the word sink in. They really believed it. They really thought abandonment was love, silence was strength, and pain was character building. But I know better now. I know that healing doesn't start with forgiving the people who hurt you. It starts with believing yourself. With trusting your version of events, even when the people who caused the pain try to rewrite it. And if you're listening to this, if something about my story feels familiar to you, please hear this part the loudest. You are not crazy. You are not too sensitive. You are not weak for wanting your parents to love you in a way that feels safe. If the people who raised you hurt you, laughed at your fear, or punished you for needing them, it wasn't your fault. If your stomach drops every time they call. If you walk on eggshells around them even now as an adult. If you've ever had to remind yourself that you deserve kindness, then it's not in your head. It's not a joke. It's a warning. I spent years thinking something was wrong with me, that I was the problem child, that I needed to change, shrink, toughen up. But the truth is, I was just a kid trying to survive in a house that made me feel small. Now, I'm building my own life. Slowly, quietly, safely. And while the scars don't vanish, they stop bleeding. Angela's voice still lives in the back of my mind sometimes. Calm, grounded, clear. When people show you who they are, believe them. So I did. And then, I walked away. They left me thinking I'd get lost. But I didn't just find my way home. I found my worth. And I'm never giving it back. If this story touched you, or if you've ever felt unseen by the people who should have protected you, know that you're not alone. Hit the like button, subscribe for more real and raw stories, and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Your voice matters. And here, you're heard.